2020. The time is 1:01 p.m. This is a special meeting to take up the question of Office of Emergency Management and a potential relocation and retrofitting of the National Guard Army Reserve Center out at the airport. And so I am officially calling this meeting to order, and attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, moving right ahead. So as it reads, retrofitting of the Armory for Emergency Operations Center with approved COVID-19 CARES grant. So let's see, who'd like to lead us off? Go right ahead. I can't believe this. Nobody wanted the building for 2 or 3 years. Now there's a lineup to get in. Wow.
It's crazy, right?
Okay, go ahead.
So a couple things to get it started. We went out on Friday and took a look at the building again. We being myself, Jody, Kim, Josh, Tiffany, and Rachel. And for now anyway, for the time being, the only piece that's needed, and I have a copy of this to make it easier for you guys if you want.
Sure.
So it's divided up, and Stephen, you could probably clarify this a little bit. It's divided up, this particular photo, into 8 sections. So for the time being, the only thing that would be needed would be this section 1, which is if you're looking at it, would be in your upper right-hand corner. The second section is the shop, which is not needed at all. The third section is just bare ground, and then the fourth section is actually where, if I remember right, Stephen, that's your maintenance shop. So that's the first thing, is that there's less land in play than was originally thought. Secondly, I've asked Corey Trapp to be here since he is the architect who prepared the cost estimate. I think when this is done, if you make a decision, fine. If you don't, fine. But just so you understand from my perspective, to try to get this done by the end of December, the clock is ticking for the architect and myself, because that's my understanding is the drop dead time for this to happen. I have a contract ready to go. I already talked to Dave Ferguson. You know, he's expecting it if we get a decision. If we don't today, I may send it to him anyway, just to help the process out. It doesn't hurt. Okay?
Okay.
So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Okay.
So Sean, with this, it looks like section 1 is the 2.41 acres.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I don't know, and Stephen could probably shed, is what the actual lease for that one section is.
You want a commercial rate right now, which is 52 cents a square foot. So if it's 104,000 square feet, roughly 105,000. So it'd be 52 cents.
So roughly $52,000 a year, which is about $4,500 a month.
Okay, that's what I wanted to.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Tiffany?
Well, I mean, I think
I need you to come up to the mic. You have your choice. You consider stand.
Tiffany Westbrook for the record. I think this is an opportunity that's not going to come by very often. It's been a really long time since there's been any funding opportunity to outfit an emergency operations center, and to even have this opportunity, it's extremely rare. We have the facility within the county. It meets needs that we've had for a long time. It frees up space within the current sheriff's office. It's really a win-win situation all the way around. For our office, it helps provide us with an emergency operations center in complete readiness 24/7, which helps us to respond quicker should we need to. It provides us with additional training spaces, which we facilitate trainings. Typically, when COVID's not happening quite frequently, at least monthly, we have trainings that we bring in first responders. In the wake of COVID, this also provides us with a space to have a place where we can do our PPE distribution. Currently, we're fragmented. We have distribution going out of my office, which is kind of a quasi warehouse right now. We have stuff over at the fairgrounds, so this would centralize that effort, and it would provide us an EOC that allows us to do social distancing. We don't have that we also don't have an EOC that's open to the volunteers in the way we would like it to be. We're in the sheriff's facility, so we're very secure, and with that, we're not as available to the volunteers who staff the EOC. So this really provides us with a lot of solutions to our problems. Currently, we have storage in the work release center, we have storage at the airport, we have storage downstairs at the sheriff's office. This would help us to centralize all of our efforts and have a better understanding of what we have when we have it and be able to access it quicker. So that's what I have. Any questions?
Do you have any funding source for the $52,000 a year for rent?
The SHSP funding cannot be used for that, and neither can these COVID dollars. So.
But you can use the COVID dollars for renovation, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Dan, do you have any thoughts?
The appraisal came back on the property, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was that just for the 1B or I'm sorry, the one section there, or was that for that whole property?
So the one section is $294,000.
That's the roughly 2.5 acres.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. You know, from where I sit, that's a bargain deal when you consider what you're getting. To on the issue of the funding source, I would, at least if it was me doing the business and I had the money in the bank, I'd buy the property, especially when you got the money sitting right there in hand to retrofit the building. I see that as a win-win. You're buying a piece of property for $300,000 that I would guess is probably well worth that, if not more. It'll probably be worth more as time goes on. But more importantly, the money's sitting there to completely put the building in order. I'm also given to understand that there's other entities in the county that may want to use it. We would not object to that, as long as it didn't get in the way of the Emergency Operations Center. And so if that can help move this forward, we'd certainly be willing to talk about that. We've heard about folks needing places to park their buses.
Yes.
And we wouldn't object to that. So if somebody else can benefit from this, we're not going to get in the way of that, but I just think it's a win-win.
Okay, so from the sheriff's standpoint, who would you see housed there?
It just depends on who it is and what they need for their space needs.
Just talking about your organization.
Yeah.
Well, for our
Yeah, for you,
organization,
I'm sorry, for you, yeah.
we would have OEM and the detective, the Hayden detectives there. That's been the plan from the get-go.
And Hayden deputies, as
Yeah.
well as
Yeah,
detectives?
They would just have a substation there for lack of putting it a
Right.
different way. So you would have OEM, and then I believe, Tiffany, they actually set out that one big open area to divide that into office space for the Hayden deputies, and they would put a detective there as well.
Okay. Sean, what's the square footage?
9,400.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
9,400,
it's
okay.
just south of 10,000.
Okay, that's all right, okay. that
K-9s
helps.
are gonna go out there too.
Yeah,
I'm
My
sorry?
understanding is,
8,500?
you're right, Sean. I'd heard, this has changed a couple different times.
right now, I think the K-9s are gonna go there too, which is gonna save having to build them a little facility. It gives them a lot of room to run around.
That's the first time I saw that plot there, but does that 200,000 or that $300,000 buy all of that?
Just the one?
Just the one?
Just the one, just that's section one.
Okay.
That's the 2.5 acres.
And so the other areas that are parceled off on that photo there, they are each individual parcels?
There's sections, so I'm not sure that,
And I think maybe
Parcels
Stephen
off it.
is, Stephen, do you want to,
So it was subdivided that way so that we could have a separate appraisal price instead of, if we had to break them off and chunk them out. We tried to do it as it makes common sense of the armory structure itself and its parking lot, the empty lot next to it, our shops, and the armory shop. That way, if we had to do different things, but the intent was to sell the whole building and structures, it was a simpler process.
And we own the building, but we don't own the property. Yeah,
that is
okay.
correct.
So, yeah, and again, if there's some way to, work with somebody else, again, we're willing to do that. I keep throwing that up because I think if somebody else can benefit for it, then it makes it even more worthwhile.
Okay, cool.
We have the elements of our operation that are required. You know, we need to have the emergency operations center and the office space for the ladies that work in and the gentlemen that work in OEM. But beyond that, we can see what else we can do.
So putting OEM aside for the moment, within your organization, how many people do you think would reside there?
Probably 3 or 4.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know, the Hayden deputies work shifts, so, you know, there may be one there per day, or per shift. And then, you know, you got the canine folks there that, they work shifts too, so it's not like you're gonna have 3 or 4 people sitting there all the time. The one that would probably sit there most of the time, side of OEM would be the detective. And we've had a detective work out of the Hayden substation before, and that's where they live.
Okay. So when you say the canines, does that mean the handlers would be there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And, you know, and again, I'm not dialed into this completely, but I don't know if there was some talk about building kennels there, so when they go on vacation, no, okay.
The building is set up for it already.
So-
It's already, it's that little pole barn that you see down there in the corner.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got all the stuff in there, I think, that they need, so. And they've been looking for a home for a while. You know, the other thing to consider too, and there's a couple things actually, I think, to consider. And one of them is, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but if this were to happen, you have said that we would not need to add on for a while to the sheriff's office.
It would add some
Help.
room.
It would push that problem down the road a ways.
How long, I'm not gonna say, but,
Right.
you know, we could expand records into that area right now. There's plans on taking civil and moving them somewhere else, or not plans, but we've talked about moving those over to the Compton building, but the short answer is, it would help us.
It will free up some space downstairs.
And in particular, if we could expand records in there, because they're just bursting at the seams, so.
And then you gotta remember too, and I don't know if Jody really, if she wants to speak to this or
Yeah,
not,
I'll
but
have Jody come.
they need to find a place for the buses.
Yes.
So there could be some help coming from them maybe. I'm not sure on that. That's more,
Jody, did you want to come up? Are you okay, Dan? Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you.
you can always come back, Dan.
If I may just ask a few questions. Having it subdivided, is that more expensive than if you left it as one piece of land that the county would want to purchase if they so desired? So when you subdivide something, does it increase the value as opposed to buying just it as a solid without it being subdivided?
Typically, yes.
Okay,
So for example, if you were to sell 2 5-acre parcels, I'm going to say in the residential world, you're probably going to fetch more than a single 10.
so
Not
my-
substantially, but probably more.
So it's just curious, since the county does own the land but has restrictions on how it can be used,
Okay?
the subdividing of the land, if that was something that could, and again, just asking the question, if it was a single piece of property as opposed to subdivided, and then you were talking about the different uses of what that could be, I was just curious if the price of the land would be less, so then if it would be less to cost, just asking. Then diving into the conversation about cost, with FTA, they are very open to doing joint developments, or they're very open to doing when you have uses that you would be able to leverage off of a transit property. So they're eager to do those types of things. We would have to look at that. One of the things that I would like to look at is that since FAA has the restriction and FTA has no restrictions other than what they put in general in terms of their certs and assurances, I would ask that I could at least send this to Washington, D.C., where I have a contact, and ask them, how do you take a property that's owned by FAA And how does that look for FTA when the parental is DOT? Just from a FTA perspective, how would you do that? How would you change those dollars?
So are you thinking in terms of a potential subdivision of this section 1?
I was thinking that Section 3 looked very appealing for purposes of being able to put the transportation buses. We could build something there if that was so inclined.
That's huge.
If
Well, I say
I
huge, it's
understand
about
it,
the
it's
same.
not
yeah.
any different in the
Yes,
size. It's about,
section
It's a
1.
couple
it's a
acres.
couple acres.
It's a couple of acres.
And then it would be.
But I'm saying if you dedicated it just to to transit, that's a lot for transit, is it not?
Well, they need a shop to work on the buses.
How many buses again? Were you 20?
Well, we would probably have. 22,
22 vehicles.
yes. And then the other thing around that, when you have incidental use, again, going into something that we would have to go to FTA to get their approval, when you have an incidental use, it could be a shared services model for a shop, and that also then would help the county defray costs for purposes if they ever needed a shop to be able to work on their vehicles. So again, we could look at this in a very holistic, in a very shared services model, or we could use it singular. So again, it would depend on the board's direction.
Who,
And for now, correct me if I'm wrong, if this went forward and it was done in December, you would work with them to get some of the buses over there now, or is that still out on the horizon?
No, obviously, we have a very short window in terms of Post Falls Highway District has been very generous, very, very kind, and we need to relocate our buses. So it would be something that we would love to be able to migrate to as soon as possible.
Stephen, I've got to ask the dumb question. Who owns section 3? It's all airport.
It's all, all of it is.
All the land is
This,
airport.
this is part of that non-aeronautical use
Right.
section of the ALP.
That's what I was going to say, make sure that it's not part of it's non-aeronautical.
It's non-aeronautical.
non-aeronautical use.
Non-aeronautical.
So-
We've discussed before, this land has been released to be sold. So you as the board can choose to sell it to the county, to a private entity, whatever, or it still has to be rented out.
Okay. So Jody, are you saying, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I want to make sure that everybody understands. So when you consult, let's just call it the feds, because it looks like you're dealing with 2 or 3.
Parental unit, yes.
The parental unit, okay. Oh, jeez,
I was being funny because Stephen and I share the same parental unit DOT.
okay.
It's not as funny as it was in my mind, so just,
I'm thinking of the Coneheads from old Saturday Night Live. What was their planet? Remulac, that's what it was. Never mind. Oh, gosh. Be that as it may. Okay, so you're thinking, or are you thinking, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Kim, are you okay? Oh, okay. I'm dating myself here. That FTA would potentially provide the money to purchase that land?
well, I know that they would. That's what we're looking for, is to be able to park the buses somewhere. And I think that, and I shouldn't say I know they would. Yes, we have opportunity where we could find federal funds for the purpose of purchasing that land and being able to use it for public transport. I broadened that discussion to say that if you have incidental use or common use, there are other things that you could do under a shared services model, which seems a little different than what Stephen is held hostage to versus what FTA has as far as a joint development or some type of shared service model. So it would be something I think it would be worth our while to investigate to see whether or not that there would be a funding opportunity to offset costs, which is why I asked the question about having subdivided versus one parcel, and then was asking about the cost. Does it decrease the cost or the value? Not the value, but the cost.
So what is it you wanted to approach FTA about?
Well, first of all, I've already made the preliminary conversation about
Okay.
having the possibility, so I was waiting for the board direction to have something where I could actually present to them directly. And then second, I think that we talked about a shared services model. That would be something that I have mentioned to them in the past, but it would be a new conversation in terms of how we could then benefit the county for purposes of, let's say, for example, maintenance.
Okay, so,
Is that
I
helpful?
don't, it's not,
Did I-
no, you're fine. I mean, I don't see the problem in your approaching them and asking what you need to ask. That's not gonna cost us anything.
No, no, no.
You okay with that? Leslie?
Yeah, I mean, because I'd just be curious if they were willing to buy, let's just say, Section 3, you know, what are the strings along the way if it doesn't get shared, if it's just strictly bus maintenance and bus storage, you know? So I kind of want to know all those parameters and see what they,
So just to answer that, and then we'll go deeper, primarily, it has to be for the intended use of what you purchase. If for some reason that intended use changes or alters, you just have to give FTA back the dollars that they gave you for what that is. So you're held to the fact that if the dollars were meant for public transport, you use it for public transport. Where I was going was that incidental use, where if you were to do it as either as a joint development or an incidental use, it could be that there would be ways that then we could do a shared services model, especially under a joint development model.
Okay.
Did that help?
good. Yes.
so if FTA gave you a check for $218,000 to buy that property, and then how much ever to build your thing,
Wait, I forgot there was a camera, sorry.
it's okay.
Okay, go.
So Section 3 is $218,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then let's say there's a better place, something else happens and you guys decide to move, then just that 218, just right, we sell it to somebody else and we just give the FTA the 218 back.
Right, so FTA would be a leaseholder, so that, a title holder. So then, yes, then when you were at a place where you determined that there was no longer the ability, then we would approach them for purposes of being able to get the money. But I think then the fact of the fair market value comes up, and so
Okay.
that would be something.
So if they're the title holder, then that doesn't matter. I mean, whatever money, whatever.
Yes.
Whatever the value is at that time, right? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Stephen, did you want to jump in here? You're good. Does that mean this works for you?
It's fine, we've discussed before, the FAA forces us to have fair market value leases. Be reimbursed for the cost.
Okay.
So essentially, it's either general fund comes up with 52,000 a year, or they come up with 133,000 to finish the purchase of that Section 1.
Is that all you owe on it is 133?
Well, it's 161 is general fund, 21 budget that can be put towards the purchase.
Can you, I think there was a conversation where Stephen had said something about his budget money.
That's what I'm talking
Is that
about.
what, okay,
161.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, go ahead, because I don't think people are following.
There was a conversation, well, Stephen, you could explain.
Can you
it better
explain
than
the-
me.
yeah,
I
please.
don't wanna talk for Stephen.
The FAA does not care how we fund it. The FAA only cares that the funding is made whole. And as we talked previously, my budget has a shortfall of 161,000, which means that you can take that money as if it was purchasing property, instead of it as being just a general fund distribution to the airport. It is the funding that you're then buying the property from the airport. The issue is this might be the last year if everything goes right with a lot of our other funding. This might be the last year that we have any realistic general fund request from the airport.
Okay, so it'd be the 161 plus whatever it is, 133,000 for the purchase.
For the
Correct.
purchase of the property,
Okay.
which Leslie and I've had that conversation once before. I don't know if I've had it with the other, which, I mean, I don't get a vote. You guys decide what you want to do with your money, but it just stops the whole conversation from taking place anymore. And puts the property back to the county. My thought is I don't agree that you have to buy your own property back, but it is what it is, so.
Okay.
How you go about it is up to you.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
I just want to
Yeah.
confirm that, speaking on behalf of the sheriff's office, we don't think that paying $5,200 or $52,000 a year is a good way to go about it, you know, I mean, you know, for the lease. And we would just entertain going to fund balance. If we would do that and
Yeah, I mean,
outright.
yeah, if we're gonna fork out another $133,000 versus paying $52,000 a year, I mean, it's basically not even quite a 2.5-year payback, yeah. So,
The other thing that just is the icing on this is the money's just sitting there that doesn't cost the county anything to make that building what it needs to be.
yeah,
Confirmed, right?
I think the overriding question for us, and I have to be careful because I don't want to tread into executive session material, but is this the right situation versus another, so. Any thoughts? Leslie, Bill?
Well, until you have your next meeting, I'm not sure that we can say yes today.
Trying to set that up right now.
Yes, thank you.
That's it.
That's it.
But this is definitely on the forefront of our mind. We're working on it every single week, couple times a week sometimes. And so I would expect would have an answer probably in the next week or two.
I would say probably 2 to 2.5 weeks on the outside. Yeah. And that's not just, we're not putting it off. We have obviously other things to consider, and so we have to fold this into the equation. And that's why the couple of weeks that we need. Anything else?
I'm gonna go ahead, if it's okay with the board, and submit the contract to Dave.
And
I
then,
mean, it's one of those things that we're gonna be a couple weeks to, figure all the other loose ends, tie them up. And that's about how long it's gonna take to get a review back from him anyway. So at least at that point, if it goes down that road, I'm ready to go that way. And if not, then, it's reviewed and we're good to go.
I think that's fine.
okay, makes sense? Okay, then. Public comment? Hearing none. 1:29, meeting adjourned, thank you.